It was 3:47 a.m. when I found the envelope. No name on it. Just a cheap white letter, tucked behind a stack of unopened mail on our kitchen counter. I wasn't snooping. I was looking for the Tylenol. My back had been killing me since I spent the entire weekend repainting the nursery. Soft yellow walls, little hand-drawn clouds I traced from a projector. Everything was ready. The crib, the mobile, the hello world sign Line picked out. But that envelope, I don't know why I opened it. Maybe because it was out of place. Maybe because my name wasn't on it. Inside was a folded sheet of lined notebook paper. Her handwriting. Messy. Rushed. It started like this. If you're reading this, then I never had the courage to tell you the truth myself. I don't love you, Curtis. I haven't for years. And this baby isn't yours. It never was. I stood there barefoot, shivering, even though the heater was on. I read it again. And again. My eyes couldn't make sense of the words, like they were scrambled, like the ink was melting. You were the safe choice. The steady one. But not the one I wanted. Not the one I wanted her to come from. Her. She meant Maisie. Our daughter. My daughter. The one I stayed up with every night when she had colic. The one who fell asleep on my chest like a little furnace. The one I whispered "Daddy's here" to when she cried. Not mine. No. I stumbled backward and knocked over the bottle rack. 6 months sober, and the crash still made my hands twitch. I sat on the floor with the letter crumpled in my fist, staring at the ceiling like answers might be written up there. They weren't. She wasn't home. She'd left for her sister's bachelorette trip 2 days ago. I had stayed home with Maisie. We made pancakes in the shape of stars. We watched that awful animated pig movie 3 times. I even let her paint my nails glittery purple. Still had it on my thumb when I found the letter. I called Line. Straight to voicemail. I texted, "Tell me this letter is a joke." No reply. Then I called her sister. "Bachelorette trip? What are you talking about? Lainey's not here. Haven't seen her in a month." That was when something broke. Not loudly. Quietly, like when a bone shifts out of place and just doesn't go back. I sat in Maisie's room. She was asleep. Her little fists curled up near her face, breathing slow and soft. I stared at her. I cried harder than I've ever cried in my life. And then I laughed. I know how that sounds. I sound insane. But I laughed because I finally saw the comedy in it all. The universe had cast me in the lead role of oblivious idiot number 1, and I had performed beautifully. Everything made sense now. The coldness. The missed anniversaries. The weird tension every time the topic of paternity tests came up on TV. And the name. Maisie. Line picked it. Not me. That night, I packed a bag. Not a dramatic one, just the essentials. No note. No confrontation. No fight. At 5:12 a.m., I kissed Maisie on the forehead. And then I walked out the front door. That was the last time I saw either of them. And that's just where this begins. I didn't sleep that night. I drove. No music, no podcasts, not even the buzz of the radio. Just the sound of tires on asphalt and the occasional creak of the engine whenever I turned too sharply. The sun came up somewhere around mile 180. I was halfway to nowhere, and every part of me was still shaking. My brain kept trying to rewrite what I read in that letter, like if I just thought hard enough, the words would rearrange themselves into something forgivable. But they didn't. They stayed exactly the same, burned into my memory like scars. I pulled into an old motel on the edge of a dying town. You know the type: one gas station, one bar, and a diner where the cook has been there since Nixon. I gave the clerk cash and a fake name. I didn't even think about it. It just slipped out of my mouth. Raymond Bishop. I don't know who Raymond Bishop is, but that night, he became the man who didn't have a daughter, didn't have a wife, didn't have a past. Just a set of keys and a bed that smelled like bleach and cigarettes. Lying on that bed, staring at the cracked ceiling, something started to fester inside me. It wasn't just betrayal. It was humiliation. I had become the town joke. Only the town didn't know it yet. My friends would slap me on the back, call me a good dad, praise me for stepping up, all while she was probably texting someone else during bath time, laughing with whoever actually fathered the child I tucked in every night. I remembered the day we signed Maisie's birth certificate. Line was oddly quiet, almost distant. I thought she was just overwhelmed. I even squeezed her hand and said, "This is the happiest day of my life." And she smiled. A smile I now realized was fake. A smile worn like a mask. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I wanted to punch a hole through the drywall, but I didn't. Instead, I got up, turned on the lamp, and stared at myself in the mirror across the room. I didn't recognize the man looking back. Pale, hollow eyes, stubble that had turned patchy and gray, shoulders slumped like the weight of every lie had finally sunk in. That man wasn't Curtis Bramble anymore. He was something else. Something smaller. Something broken. At some point, I pulled out my phone and typed Lainey's name into Facebook. Her profile was still up, still public. Her most recent post was a picture of Maisie at the park, standing on a slide, smiling. That smile I used to think was mine. The caption said, "Our little sunshine." Every day I look at her and see the best parts of my world. I stared at that word, our. Who the hell was our? Because if it wasn't me, who was it? I scrolled further back, looking for anything suspicious. And that's when I saw it. A comment under an old photo of her with her work friends. Most were harmless. Just the usual heart emojis and gorgeous girl, fluff. But one stood out. It was from a guy named Mitch Galloway. Still can't believe how much she looks like her mom. Wild, huh? Lainey had liked it. No reply. Just a heart. But that was enough. I clicked on Mitch's profile. His photo was of him in scrubs. Emergency room nurse. Hospital ID badge. Same place Lainey used to work before she took time off from Maisie. Mitch had high cheekbones, black hair, and those same piercing eyes that Maisie had. The resemblance wasn't just there, it was undeniable. Like seeing two versions of the same person, separated only by time. My stomach twisted. I thought I might throw up. Instead, I screenshot everything and emailed it to myself. Then I deleted the browser history. Old habits. You don't spend 5 years married to someone who lies like it's second nature without learning to cover your tracks too. That night, I didn't sleep. Not even for a minute. I just sat there, in a stranger's room under a stranger's name, watching the numbers on the clock blink forward, while the foundation of my life sank deeper into the dirt. The question wasn't what I was going to do next. The question was, how far was I willing to go to erase myself from their world without leaving a single piece behind? And trust me, I already knew the answer. The motel room started to feel like a coffin by the third day. The walls were too close. The light too yellow. The bed creaked every time I shifted, like it was reminding me I didn't belong anywhere anymore. I lived off vending machine snacks and gas station coffee, too paranoid to use my debit card, too proud to call anyone. I didn't want comfort. I didn't want advice. I wanted facts. I wanted confirmation. I needed to know if the last 5 years of my life had been a Truman Show-level lie, or if maybe, just maybe, there was some explanation, some twisted, insane way this wasn't exactly what it looked like. So I went back. Not in daylight. Not like a man with a key and a reason to knock. No. I waited until just past midnight, when the street was dead and only the flickering porch light cast shadows across the driveway. My house. My garage. My life. Still standing like it hadn't been completely gutted from the inside. I parked 2 blocks away and walked in the dark. I wore a hoodie I hadn't put on since the bachelor party I wasn't supposed to remember. I kept my head down. The key still worked. That part almost made me laugh. Inside, everything was the same. The fake eucalyptus wreath Lainey insisted on hanging above the fireplace. The crooked baby gate at the stairs I'd meant to fix. The bottle of children's vitamins open on the counter. My life had kept going without me, like I was the only one who realized the movie had ended. I didn't touch anything. I went straight to the hallway closet, the one Lainey always kept locked with a child-proof knob, even though Maisie couldn't reach it. I remembered once, years ago, I asked her what was in there, and she brushed it off. Old junk. High school diaries. Embarrassing stuff. But that night, I had a screwdriver. It only took 2 minutes to pop the knob off. The door creaked open like it was resisting me on purpose. Inside was a stack of boxes, some labeled, some not. I dug through them carefully, trying not to make noise. Dust clung to my hands. My fingers were trembling. Then I found it. A plain gray shoebox. Heavier than it looked. No label. Inside were photos. Dozens of them. Some old, some recent. Some I'd never seen in my life. One showed Lainey in a hospital hallway, visibly pregnant, smiling, but the man with her wasn't me. He was holding her hand. It was Mitch. Same guy from the Facebook comments. Same eyes as Maisie. He had a stethoscope around his neck and his head leaned toward her like they were in on a private joke. There were letters, too. Some typed, most handwritten. From Mitch to Lainey. From Lainey to Mitch. I read one. If he ever finds out, it'll destroy him. He's not strong enough for the truth. But I couldn't imagine raising a child with anyone else. She deserves your blood, not his. That was the line that made my knees buckle. I sat on the floor, box in my lap, my heartbeat pounding so hard in my ears it felt like someone was drumming against my skull. 5 years. 5 years of bedtime stories, of doctor visits, of birthday candles and night terrors and lullabies, all for a child who was never mine. And they knew. They had known from the beginning. I wanted to burn it. All of it. The letters, the photos, the house. But instead, I took out my phone and photographed everything. I wasn't thinking about revenge. I wasn't even thinking about line A. I was thinking about Maisie. Not because I wanted to hurt her, but because she deserved to grow up knowing how this lie was born. One day, when she was old enough to understand, I'd find a way to tell her the truth. I put everything back exactly how I found it, even the dust. I reattached the knob and slipped out of the house without a sound. Before I left, I stood at the edge of Maisie's bedroom doorway. She was asleep, her little face half buried in the stuffed fox I gave her last Christmas. Her nightlight glowed soft pink. I whispered, "I love you." And then I walked away again. But this time, I didn't drive back to the motel. I had somewhere else to go, a place I hadn't set foot in for over 15 years. A place I swore I'd never return to unless everything else fell apart. So of course, that's where I went. I hadn't been back to that place since I was 18. It looked even smaller than I remembered, the porch sagging a little more, the roof more rusted around the edges. The white paint had faded into a permanent shade of sorrow. But the worst part? The wind chimes were still there, still clinking that same off-key tune they made the night my mother locked me out during a thunderstorm and told me to man up or leave forever. This was the house that built me, or maybe broke me, depending on who you ask. I didn't come here to reminisce. I came because it was the only place on earth where no one would look for me. No one wanted to look for me here. My mother, if you can still call her that, opened the door barefoot with a cigarette already lit and an expression that told me she was halfway surprised I hadn't died in a ditch somewhere. Her name is Beverly, but people in town used to call her Bam behind her back, short for Bam Bam, because she had a temper. Because she once broke my dad's nose with a rolling pin and made him apologize for bleeding on the carpet. "You look like hell," she muttered as she stepped aside. "You look the same," I replied, stepping into the smell of old fry oil and stale regrets. I didn't tell her why I was there, not exactly. I didn't mention the letter, or the box in the closet, or the photo of the man holding my wife's hand like she was already his. I just said I needed to lie low for a few days, maybe a week. She didn't ask questions. She never did. Beverly didn't believe in sympathy, only survival. Her love language was not asking what your bruises were from as long as you kept bringing home paychecks. That night, I lay in the bed I once shared with cockroaches and trauma, staring at the same ceiling I used to count water stains on when I was too scared to sleep. Something about being there brought it all rushing back, not just Line A and Maisie and the betrayal, but before all that, the patterns, the behaviors I thought I had outgrown. I remembered being 12 and hearing my mother whisper into the phone, "I wish he wasn't mine. I wish I'd just walked out when I had the chance." I remembered standing outside the kitchen window and seeing her with a man who wasn't my father, not once, but over and over again, while she smiled with the same casual cruelty I saw on Lainey's face every time I asked, "Is something wrong?" And she replied, "You're just imagining things." And that's when it hit me. I had trained myself to ignore red flags because I grew up thinking love meant tolerating betrayal. That family meant enduring silence. That men like me didn't leave. We stayed, we endured, and we called it being strong. But that night, in the cold guest room of a woman who never wanted to be a mother, I realized something. I didn't want to be strong anymore. I wanted to be free. The next morning, I shaved. I cut off the patchy beard that made me look like a sad extra in a survival documentary. I put on clean clothes and walked 5 miles to the nearest library, not because I needed a book, but because I needed a computer. One that Line A couldn't track. One that didn't know my name. I spent the next 5 hours digging through digital records. Birth certificate filings. Tax information. Hospital employment logs. I even ran a background check on Mitch Galloway, scrubbed clean, of course, but it told me enough. He transferred hospitals 8 months after Maisie was born. Not to move away from Line A, but to move closer. That lined up with the new apartment she claimed was closer to daycare. The same one I helped her paint. The same one I wasn't allowed to have a key to because you're always working anyway. And that's when I saw it. A receipt. An Amazon order history tied to Lainey's email. One of those auto-saved accounts. She had ordered a world's best daddy mug. Not for me, but for someone named Mitch 2 weeks after Father's Day. She never gave me a gift. Said we were tight on money. I sat there, gripping the edge of the desk so hard my knuckles cracked. The librarian gave me a side eye, but didn't say anything. I forced a smile and logged out. Back at the house, Beverly was passed out on the recliner with the TV blasting some courtroom reality show. I walked past her, up the stairs, into the bathroom, and stared at myself again. But this time something had changed. Not in my face. Not in my eyes. In my posture. I wasn't hunched anymore. I wasn't defeated. I wasn't a man waiting to be told who he was. I was a man quietly planning how to disappear, so effectively that when they finally realized I was gone, it would already be too late to undo it. It's amazing how invisible a man can become when he finally decides to stop being predictable. When he stops calling, stops answering, stops reacting the way he's supposed to, the way people expect him to, so they can roll their eyes and call him dramatic or unstable or just another man-child in a flannel shirt crying about feelings. I didn't give them that satisfaction. Not Lainey, not Mitch, not even Beverly, who, after a week of me crashing in her guest room like a ghost that refused to rattle chains, finally asked, "So what's your plan, genius? You just gonna rot here like your father did?" I didn't answer her. I was already writing it down. It started in a composition notebook, the kind kids use in middle school. I labeled the first page the disappearance file. Not because I wanted to fake my death, or run to another country, or do something melodramatic. I wasn't looking for spectacle. I was looking for erasure. Clean. Quiet. Permanent. Page 1. Finances. Lainey didn't know I had a second bank account. Years ago, I opened it to stash away a little money every time I got paid in cash for side jobs. Rainy day money, I called it. She thought I spent it on cigarettes and vending machine beef jerky. She never asked for receipts. That account had just under 11 grand in it. Not much, but enough. Page 2. Documents. I still had my passport. Still had my birth certificate. I knew a guy, not a criminal, but someone in the gray market of disappearing. Ex-military, paranoid as hell, owed me a favor from a job I helped him with years ago. He used to tell me, "Kurt, one day you're gonna want to stop existing. Call me when that day comes." I used a burner phone to text him one word, "Now." He replied with a location, no questions asked. Page 3. Digital traces. I deleted everything. Socials, email accounts, cloud backups, photos. I even wiped the old laptop Lainey made fun of, the one with the missing keycaps and the fan that sounded like a dying bird. I formatted the hard drive until it was nothing but space. You don't realize how many places your life leaks until you try to clean it up. The web is a graveyard of who we were pretending to be. Page 4. The goodbye letter. This one was tricky. I wrote it 10 times. Burn 9. The final version was short. Lainey, you were right. I wasn't strong enough for the truth, not then. But I'm strong enough now to leave you with it. Let Mitch explain the past. Let him handle the future. I won't interfere. I won't come back. As for Maisie, you chose to build her story without me. So now I choose not to be written into it. Don't try to find me. See, I didn't leave the letter on the kitchen counter. Too cliché. I taped it to the inside of her dashboard, folded, sealed in a Ziploc bag, weatherproof. The next time she adjusted her seat or plugged in her phone, she'd find it. The hardest part was Maisie. You think you're ready to walk away until you actually have to stand at the edge of goodbye and mean it. I drove by her daycare one last time. Watched her come out holding a paper sunflower she made. She wore those glittery light-up shoes I bought her for Easter. I parked across the street. Didn't get out. Just sat there, swallowing a scream that lived in my chest for 5 years. And then I left. That night, I met the ex-military guy in a hardware store parking lot 4 towns over. He looked older, like he hadn't slept in a year. "You sure?" he asked. I nodded. "Once this starts," he said, "you're not Curtis Bramble anymore." "I already stopped being him," I replied. He handed me a manila envelope. Inside were IDs, a burner phone, a storage key, and instructions I wouldn't understand until later. He didn't charge me. He just said, "You're not the first guy to vanish because someone told a pretty lie and smiled while doing it." I drove west. Past midnight. Past tired. Past broken. By the time the sun rose, Curtis Bramble was gone. And someone else was behind the wheel. The envelope the ex-military guy gave me contained more than just a new name. It contained a script. A script I wasn't sure I could follow. There was a driver's license under the name Elias Ford, complete with an address from a town I'd never even heard of in Indiana. A prepaid debit card with just under $2,000 on it. A key to a storage locker with a number scribbled in Sharpie. And a single note: start small. Stop being who you were. Learn how to vanish. For a week, I lived in the kind of motels where the carpet is sticky and the walls are thin enough to hear arguments that sound exactly like the ones you used to have. I paid cash, shaved my beard, cut my hair short, and even bought a pair of glasses with clear lenses just to change the reflection I gave the world. But the problem wasn't the reflection, it was the eyes staring back. No matter what I did, the man in the mirror was still Curtis Bramble, the fool who rocked a child to sleep for 5 years only to find out she wasn't his. The man who thought love meant loyalty, and loyalty meant turning yourself into a doormat people could wipe their feet on. I could switch names, change towns, and burn every photograph I ever took, but I couldn't stop seeing that man looking back at me, pitiful, broken, and somehow still begging for scraps of an answer he'd never get. I told myself I had to move forward, not backward. The storage locker was in a rundown facility outside Columbus, Ohio. Rows of metal doors with numbers sprayed on them, the kind of place where forgotten lives go to rot. My key opened Unit 317. Inside was a suitcase, a duffel bag, and a shoebox. The suitcase held clothes in my new size: jeans, flannel shirts, a pair of boots. The duffel held cash, maybe $15,000 in rubber-banded stacks, and a burner laptop with no history. The shoebox was the strangest part. Inside were photographs of a family I didn't know. A man, a woman, 2 kids at a beach, smiling like the world had never touched them. And on the back of each photo, in thick black marker, a word: practice. I sat on the cold concrete floor staring at those faces. I didn't know if they were dead, if they were missing, or if this was just some psychological trick my contact was playing to force me into understanding. But it worked, because as I looked at those strangers, I realized this was the future line A had stolen from me. A family that might have been real, one that could have been mine if not for the lie she planted at the core of my life. And now, instead of fighting for that dream, I was being told to rehearse the art of forgetting with a family that wasn't even real. I laughed, not the kind of laugh that comes from humor, but the sharp, broken kind that slips out when you've got nothing left to lose. For the next month, I lived as Elias Ford. I found day work in construction, kept my head down, avoided eye contact. I told people I was divorced, that my ex-wife got the kid, and that I moved here for a fresh start. The lie rolled off my tongue too easily, which scared me more than anything. Maybe this was who I had always been destined to become, a shadow of a man, existing just far enough under the surface that no one would notice when he drowned. But even in that quiet new life, the past followed me. Every child's laugh I overheard reminded me of Maisie. Every grocery store I walked into made me look for Lainey's face in the crowd, even though I knew she wasn't there. And every night, when I closed my eyes, I saw Mitch's hand on her stomach in that photo, claiming what was never supposed to be his. Then one evening, in the motel bathroom, I caught something in the mirror that nearly made my knees give out. Not Curtis, not Elias, something else. My mouth was curled in a smile I didn't recognize, cold, calculated, deliberate. The kind of smile you see on a man who knows something no one else does. For the first time in months, I wasn't crying, wasn't begging, wasn't drowning. I was planning, and that terrified me, because disappearing had taught me a truth I hadn't been ready for. It's not the betrayal that destroys you. It's what grows inside you once the betrayal settles in and takes root. That night, I closed the notebook titled The Disappearance File and opened a fresh one. I labeled the first page The Return File, because maybe vanishing wasn't the ending. Maybe it was just the setup. The first line I wrote in that new notebook was simple. If they built a life on lies, I'll give them silence so heavy it cracks the walls. It wasn't about revenge in the way movies tell you. I wasn't going to show up screaming, demanding explanations or custody or money. No, that would have been too easy for them. If I played that part, Line would have rolled her eyes, Mitch would have tightened his grip around the family I thought was mine, and I would have been dismissed as bitter, crazy, unstable. No, my return had to be quieter, sharper. The kind of presence you don't see until it's already in your house, rearranging the furniture of your peace. I spent weeks preparing, all while still living as Elias Ford in a town that didn't care if I existed or not. Construction work gave me cash and routine, but my mind was always back in Pennsylvania, replaying every word of that letter, every photograph in that shoebox, every time I had tucked Maisie into bed. She didn't choose this lie. She didn't ask to be the rope in a tug-of-war between two adults too selfish to see the future. And though she wasn't my blood, she carried my voice in her head, the songs I hummed, the way I whispered that monsters weren't real. I had shaped her little world, even if the paperwork said otherwise. That thought kept me awake every night. They couldn't erase me, no matter how hard they tried. So I began small. First, I tracked them digitally. Line wasn't careful online. She never was. Her new apartment, the one I helped paint, showed up in the background of a photo her friend tagged. I found Mitch's name on the hospital website, a smiling headshot with pediatric ER nurse written beneath. The irony hit me like a hammer. Of course he worked with children. Of course the man who stole my life was the one who understood hers better than I ever could. It was poetic, in the cruelest way possible. I collected every detail, not for confrontation, but for context. To know their rhythms, their habits, the soft spots they never imagined anyone would notice. Then I made my first move. Not loud, not reckless, just a postcard. No return address, no name, just a single sentence written in block letters. The truth always comes back. I mailed it to their apartment, using gloves so even the ink couldn't betray me. And then I waited. The reaction came sooner than I thought. 2 days later, I checked Lainey's Facebook. She posted nothing, but she deleted dozens of old photos. Ones of her with Mitch. Ones of her with Maisie where the comments mentioned family. She was scrubbing the record, trying to sanitize the lie before it spread. Mitch, on the other hand, tightened his profile completely. No more public photos. No more comments. Just a locked door where a window used to be. It made me laugh. They thought secrecy would save them, but all it did was confirm I'd hit a nerve. I didn't stop there. I knew silence was my greatest weapon, so I used it like a blade. At night, I would call Lainey's number from burner phones and hang up the moment she answered. I wasn't after conversation, just the sound of her saying, "Hello?" with that nervous edge in her voice. I knew it would keep her awake, glancing at the door, wondering if her carefully built world was starting to crack. And every time I hung up, I felt a little stronger. Not because I wanted to torment her, but because for the first time, she wasn't the one writing the script. Still, it wasn't enough. Because deep down, beneath the planning and the notebooks and the silent calls, I still wanted to see Maisie. Not touch her, not take her, just see. To remind myself she wasn't just a memory, not just a ghost of 5 wasted years. And that chance came one afternoon when I tracked them to a park near their apartment. I stayed across the street, sitting on a bench with a newspaper I didn't read. And there she was, Maisie, running with other kids, her hair tied back in a sloppy ponytail, her laugh carrying across the grass like it always did. For a moment, the ache in my chest almost crushed me. Because watching her, I realized I didn't want her to grow up thinking Mitch had been her hero all along. Somewhere in her heart, she had to remember me, even if they tried to erase it. Lainey sat on a bench nearby, scrolling on her phone, barely looking up. Mitch was there too, tossing a frisbee with another kid. They looked like a family, but from my angle, I saw something they couldn't hide, the distance between them. She leaned away when he brushed too close. He laughed a little too loudly, like he was trying to prove something. And Maisie, though she smiled, kept running back toward the bench, as if searching for something that wasn't there. I knew that feeling all too well. I didn't approach. I didn't break the line between my world and theirs. But as I sat there, heart pounding, I knew this. My silence wasn't going to stay in postcards or late-night phone calls. The return file wasn't about vanishing anymore. It was about reminding them that lies don't end just because you bury them. And soon enough, they were going to find out just how much of me they had underestimated. I didn't sleep the night after seeing Maisie in the park. Not because I was haunted, not like before, but because something in me had changed. I kept hearing her laugh, that bright, unfiltered sound that had once filled our tiny house with joy before it became the echo chamber of betrayal. But this time, her laughter didn't feel like a knife. It felt like a door. For weeks, I'd been living on the edge of their world like a ghost with unfinished business, thinking silence would somehow balance the lie they built. But in truth, I was still giving them power. I was still orbiting their choices, tethered to their mistakes. That postcard, the phone calls, the stakeouts, none of it gave me what I really wanted. Because what I wanted wasn't revenge. It wasn't justice. It was freedom. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in years. I got in the truck and just drove without planning, without calculating, without stalking. I drove north. The sun rose behind me, and with every mile, I felt the noise in my head get a little quieter. Somewhere outside of Erie, I stopped at a diner. The waitress called me Han, poured my coffee without asking, and didn't care who I used to be. I ate pancakes alone, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel pathetic doing it. When I got back in the truck, I pulled out the notebook labeled the return file. I stared at it for a long while. Then I rolled down the window and let the wind take it. Every page, every scrap of planning, every tactic, gone in pieces across a Pennsylvania cornfield. I didn't need it anymore. Because I wasn't going back. Not physically, not emotionally, not spiritually. That part of my life, the one defined by Lainey's lies and Mitch's smug replacement act, it didn't own me anymore. Maisie would be okay. That hurt to admit. But she would. Maybe she'd grow up never knowing the full story. Maybe she'd hear some twisted version where I left because I was unstable or selfish. But I knew the truth, and someday, when she was older, when the time was right, maybe she'd go digging and find it too. Maybe she'd wonder why I vanished without a fight. And maybe, just maybe, she'd understand it was the only way I could protect myself without wounding her in the process. 2 months later, I found a little town tucked up near the Canadian border. Quiet place. No big box stores, no chain anything. Just a hardware store, a library, and a lake so still it looked like glass. I got a job fixing docks, helping older folks with winter prep. My name? Elias Ford, still worked. But now it wasn't a mask. It was mine. I rented a small cabin by the woods. No TV, just books and radio. In the evenings, I'd walk to the lake, sit on the dock, and watch the sunset paint the water. I stopped looking over my shoulder. I stopped checking Lainey's socials. Eventually, I even stopped thinking about what she might be telling people about me. I made new routines. I started writing again, not revenge letters, not lists. Real writing. Fiction. Short stories. I sent a few to magazines under a pen name. One got published. The check was small, but I didn't care. It was proof that something was still alive in me. Something creative, something unbroken. One morning in early spring, a postcard arrived at the general store's mail drop. No name on the return. Just a little hand-drawn fox on the front. The same kind Maisie used to sleep with. On the back, just 3 words written in childlike handwriting. Still love you. I stared at it for what felt like hours. There was no way to know if it was real. Could have been line A trying to bait me. Could have been a mistake. Could have been anything. But I chose to believe. Because that's what healing is, in the end. It's not forgetting. It's not erasing. It's choosing what parts you carry forward. And in that moment, I chose that postcard. I pinned it above my desk. And every time I looked at it, I didn't feel hate. I didn't feel pain. I felt free. That was the ending I never thought I'd earn. And somehow, it was more than enough.